true. Kamikaze, my death is gained. I've been marked by the maker of peculiar display. High and lofty, they see me as weak, but I won't live and die for the power they see. There was a man in the desert with knots in his head. The sand that he walked was also his bed. The words that he spoke, thinking people assume wasn't too much left in the upper room. With skins on his back and hair on his face, they thought it was strange to the look as he ate. See the Pharisees trip when they heard him speak to the king, to the head of his Jesus. What will people think when they hear that I'm a Jesus freak? What will people do when they find out it's true? And I don't really care if they label me a Jesus freak. There ain't no disguising the truth. There ain't no disguising the truth. No, I ain't into hiding the truth. Laying all down before my king, offering up my everything. Laying all down before the one I serve. I can understand the reasons why you came on this earth and died, and now I give it all to you. So take my life, take my mind, take my soul, take my will, 'cause I am yours now. I give it all to you. So take my life, take my mind, take my soul, take my will, 'cause I am yours now. I give it all to you. I won't forget the wonder of how you brought deliverance, the exodus in my heart. As you found me, you freed me, held back the waters for my release. Oh Yahweh, y'all sing it with us, come on. 'Cause you're the God who fights for me, Lord of every victory. Hallelujah, hallelujah. You have torn apart the sea, you have led me through the deep. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Right. Y'all are my people. Tonight you're gonna hear me say a lot of we, because we're all working this thing out constantly. It never stops. You're not gonna hear me say you should, you've got to. That's not gonna happen because I'm figuring this out just alongside with you, okay? So I want y'all to know we are friends. Y'all are my people, and we're just gonna have a conversation tonight. Okay, we cool with that? Awesome. So I want to know something real quick, and don't be shy. How many of you have some like goals for yourself right now? Anybody? All right, someone shout out what their goal is.
To get my kids back.
Get your kids back, absolutely.
Financial independence.
Financial independence.
Stay off drugs.
Stay off drugs, stay sober.
Go to nursing school.
Stable, go to nursing school.
Permanent housing.
Permanent housing. Yep, those are good goals. So, tonight, let me ask you this one more question. Is there things about your life right now that you don't love? Me too, by the way. So tonight, I promise, this is gonna sound like a bold claim. I'm gonna tell you how to fix everything you don't like about your life right now.
Wow.
I'm gonna tell you how to actually reach those goals that you have set for yourself. I know it's really hot, but does that help catch your attention to want to listen a little bit? So, I'm gonna tell you a secret. In life, you are right where you're supposed to be. And some of y'all are like, you can go ahead and leave. Absolutely not. You may say that, but it's true. You are right where you think you deserve to be. You see, self-worth is the key. Is this like gonna keep being kind of
Tackling church.
sweet? I don't want like anybody to get tinnitus or anything. That would kind of drive me crazy. Test, 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 test. That's better. Kind of.
I'll work on it. Keep talking.
Okay. So, our self-worth determines our behavior. Y'all know what self-worth means? It's kind of like what you feel you deserve, right? And that determines our behavior. Our behavior determines where we end up in life. So if you aren't where you want to be, we need to immediately check our self-worth. Now, here's the problem. A lot of us have allowed our self-worth to be determined by other people. Think about that. There's a few reasons for that. So I won't get super sciencey, but in the first 7 years of your life, your self-worth is forming. It's developing those core beliefs you have about yourself. So a childhood that involves unhealthy people can result in you believing you deserve to be around unhealthy people. A chaotic childhood can make you believe you deserve to be in chaos. That family member or friend that said horrible things about you, you start to believe, right? And it affects your self-worth. That relationship in high school where you were treated horribly makes you think you deserve to be treated horribly. You know what I mean? And after year after year after year of being treated XYZ way, and your self-worth has resulted to nothing, you find yourself at this place in life where you're like, wait a second, how did I end up here? How did I end up in this hot weather, in this pavilion in Meridian, Mississippi, this meeting I got to go to, right? Some of us are like this meeting I get to go to, you know? But have y'all ever had that moment in life where you're like, how did I end up here? You know what I mean? It's all because of our self-worth. Now, this is really common in people with an addictive personality. We have trouble finding satisfaction in ourselves and who we are. We have trouble accepting ourselves for who we are today, right? Anybody just not okay with who you are today? Right? So what we do, because we have this void in our soul and our heart, is we look towards drugs or alcohol to fill that void, right? Some of us, our addiction is relationships, porn, food, whatever it may be, right? So our addiction becomes our attempts to fill that void in our life. Does that make sense? And have any of you ever felt like you try to get other people to fill that void? Like it's like some of us said, I want to be financially independent. I want to be stable. But have you ever felt like you can't be stable? You need someone else to make you feel whole. You need someone else to tell you you're worthy. It's kind of called codependency. Anybody ever heard of that? Anybody ever felt like they've dealt with that in our life? That absolutely, that is really common in people with addictive personalities. And just codependency is a direct result of a lack of ability to love yourself. It's a direct result of a lack of ability to define your own self-worth and to accept yourself as you are. There's some reasons people deal with codependency. A lot of times a conditional loving or chaotic childhood environment teaches the codependent that they get love whenever they take care of others, or they are the person the other people want them to be. Then they get love, right? Anybody ever think about that? You think about some of your childhood relationships, maybe your parents, maybe your siblings, where you got love right? It wasn't unconditional love, the love that God has for us, right? Codependency is using a relationship to fill a bottomless void due to not feeling whole and loved as an individual. It's not the need to be loved that's the issue. It's the inability to love oneself that's the problem. And the result is codependents have trouble managing emotions and communicating. They deal with obsessive thinking. They have a hard time living independently and maintaining healthy romantic and family relationships. So it's important that those of us who struggle with codependency seek fulfillment as an individual rather than being dependent on others. We have to learn to define our own self-worth. So I want you to think about this. How do you define your own self-worth? When you think about you, finish this sentence in your mind. I deserve blank. I am worthy of blank. Right? Now, some of you may say, I deserve to be rich. I deserve to have my kids. I deserve to be successful. You may be thinking that up here, but you don't believe it in here if that's not where you're at in life. Hear me clearly on that. You may think that up here because it sounds nice, but you don't truly believe it if you're not there. There's a disconnect in your self-worth. Let me tell you this. Your self-worth is like a thermostat. Hear me clearly on this. If you don't hear anything, I want you to hear this. Your self-worth is like a thermostat. Let's say your self-worth has been damaged by other people, by trauma that you've been through, by abuse you've been through, by just a negative childhood environment. And let's say your self-worth is at a 65, okay? But you know what? You work hard and life starts getting good. You're doing good in school. Things are better at home. You get a good job. Here's the problem. Things start going good, but your self-worth is still a 65. You know what's going to happen? You're going to self-sabotage. You're going to self-sabotage, and you're not going to go right back to 65. You're going to go to a rock bottom. Because we're never going to overperform. We're never going to outperform our own self-worth. Anybody think about times in life where things start going good, and it's like we burn the bridge with fireworks, you know what I mean? Like we self-sabotage. Anybody notice self-sabotaging tendencies in yourself? At one point in my life, I started saying, man, I got to figure out what's the trigger to these downward spirals, right? You know what I found? One of the big triggers to a downward spiral for me was things going well. You know what I mean? Things go well, and I don't believe I deserve that, so I got to tank it. Right? Low self-worth and self-esteem has been proven to be a root factor in many mental health issues. Now, the statistics show that 70% of people going to outpatient meetings like this struggle with mental health issues like anxiety, depression, things like that. And a huge root cause of those mental health issues is a lack of self-worth. Also, the World Health Organization said that depression is the leading cause of illness. The leading cause of illness. And what if rewiring our self-worth could fix all that? What if rewiring our self-worth could help with our physical issues? What if it could help us get to where we want to be in life? What if it could help us get our kids back, go to nursing school, become financially independent? I truly believe it can. So I grew up around a recovery center. It's Jacobsville Recovery Center in Poplarville, Mississippi. It's a women's 6-month addiction recovery center, great place. I have a few ladies here that actually got to go there, and they know when you come to Jacobsville, you're family. We're all family. Those are my sisters. And when I was 14, this was when I was first exposed to addiction, because those women over there were my family. And all of a sudden, I remember the first time I went over there to see my friend, and she had left. She left and went and relapsed. And my 14-year-old brain couldn't understand. This is probably how some of your children feel. My 14-year-old brain was like, wait, why would she leave? And you know, my parents are trying to explain to me. I remember the second time I experienced that heartbreak. I remember the third time I experienced that heartbreak. And as a kid, I'm just like, I don't know how to wrap my head around it. So it set a fire under me to like hack addiction. To like figure out, how do we overcome this? Because I just had so many questions. You know, as a kid, your curiosity is like through the roof. And I was like, I have to figure this out. So I went to school and I started studying sociology and I started studying addiction. I did a thesis recently on women in recovery and residential recovery. And you know what I found was the two main causes of addiction for women? Trauma and negative environments. Now, when I say environment, negative relationships, a negative family home. And men, I know y'all are dealing with the same thing. Lack of support. Look, men have it hard. We don't give y'all enough credit. Men are taught from a young age to suck it up. Oh, things got bad. Real men don't cry. How unfair is that? How unfair is that? You're taught, no matter what, you better make everything perfect for your family. And guess what? None of us are ever going to be perfect. So what I think happens for a lot of men is that pressure, you crack. And you look for numbing and a escape from all that pressure and all that pain of not being perfect. And that's where addiction comes into play. So I was learning all these things, looking at the surveys I had given these women in my recovery program. And then I said, well, let me look at the science just to see if they line up, right? Basically, what I was seeing is that addiction was an emotional coping mechanism. Addiction was how we dealt with problems in life that we don't know how to deal with. Addiction of any type, food, relationships, drugs, alcohol, addiction of any type was not our problem. It was our solution to our problems. Amen. Right? So we got a lot of programs that are super focused on sobriety and super focused on that type of thing. And the truth is, this is so much more complex than sobriety, because the likelihood is most people relapse. Like, we don't talk about that enough. Most people are going to relapse. So we got to get to the root so that doesn't happen. We can't just focus on, okay, how many days have you been sober? We got to figure out why the addiction happened in the first place. My mom says it really well. She says, we got to find the root. We got to uproot it. We got to pull it out, and we got to replace it with the truth. Because here's the problem. We've been told, you're this, you're not worth anything, you're this, and we believed it. We've been abused, we've dealt with negative environments, and we believed that we deserved that. So we're believing a lie, which means we're living a lie. Right? That's how we end up in places where we're like, how did I get here? Right? When you live a lie, that leads to death. When you live in the truth, that leads to life, and life abundantly. A life that you could never even imagine. There was one of the scientists that said, drug use as an emotional regulation coping strategy has long been suggested to be a key determinant of the drug use going from controlled social drug use to addiction. It's when we start using our addiction to deal with life that we lose control. I did a show, a podcast with Josh and Drew, and we talked about the choice versus disease debate, right? And I think there's people on both sides of the fence that are like, no, this is right, no, this is right. And long story short, addiction is too complex to be reduced to a choice or a disease. We make some choices in the beginning, but at some point, we're not in the driver's seat anymore. At some point, the addiction takes over. The willpower, what willpower? You know what I mean? Nobody chooses to destroy their life. Nobody chooses to have to come to some meeting in the park and it's hot. You know what I mean? Nobody chooses to lose their children. You didn't choose that, right? At some point, the addiction takes over. My grandfather says it really well. He says, he started our recovery programs, and he says, addiction isn't a disease, it's a sickness, right? And when you think about sin, a lot of people say this about sin. Sin will take you further than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost more than you want to pay. So we make some choices to do some small sins, right? It's just small, it's no big deal. It's just social. I'm just having fun, right? We don't get to choose at that point. When that sin sickness takes over, it's over. But here's the good news. Addiction may have began with a couple choices, and then it might have gotten in the driver's seat, but you know how addiction ends? Choices. You get to be in the driver's seat. And all of you are here now. That tells me you got in the driver's seat of your life, right? Something happened, some rock bottom moment, some legal issue happened, and thank God it did. Thank God your rock bottom didn't take you out forever, right? Thank God you survived your rock bottom and you ended up here. Now you get to be in the driver's seat of your life. So we look at these things we've been through, and in addiction, a lot of times we project blame on others, right? My mom is the reason I went through this. My dad is the reason I went through this. And a lot of that's probably kind of true, right? But we can't recover with that mindset. We can't recover with that mindset. We have to forgive ourselves and we have to forgive them, right? Because we have to now take ownership and say, okay, this is where my life took me, and it may be because of the ways other people treated me, but I'm going to get where I want to go now because of the choices I make, right? It's really freeing, actually, because you're like, you know what? No one else is in control of my life anymore. So I had these women take this survey, and I asked them questions. These are some of the statements they made about their self-worth after abuse, during addiction, and during recovery. One woman said, things that were said and done to me made me feel worthless. There's that self-worth. The effects that other people's behavior had on her destroyed her self-worth. One girl said, my mom was physically and verbally abusive to me, and that's when I started feeling inadequate. Like nothing I could ever do would make her happy. My abuser convinced me I was unlovable and could never get any better. One woman answered to why she partook in drugs and ended up in those environments. I wanted to be someone different, someone accepted, somewhere to belong. One woman said, I had to maintain the mask of being the carefree party girl when really I was a socially awkward introvert looking for acceptance anywhere and any way I could find it. See, some of you started using drugs and hanging around that crowd, and that might have been the first time you felt loved. Now, it wasn't real love, because real love wouldn't put you in that situation where you could destroy your life, right? But that might have been the first sense of like, I'm accepted. These people want me around, right? You know what I mean? Whenever women were in recovery, this is what they said about their self-worth. One woman said, I got a relationship with God. I found out who I really was, and I learned to trust again. See, we believe these lies about our self-worth. And in the healing, this woman said, I figured out who I really was. I remembered who I am. Now I know what my self-worth is. I forgot what my self-worth was. I was tripping a little bit, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to remember who we are. Because let me tell you something. You are the sons and the daughters of the King of Kings. Right? That's a big deal. He has an inheritance for you. That he had a book written about your inheritance before you were born. I got chills, and it's really hot out here, so I know it's the Holy Spirit. He had a book written about all the amazing things he wanted to give you in this little time that you have on earth. But the problem is, we're forfeiting our blessings through our behavior. So here's a couple ways you can upgrade your self-worth. The first way is through repetition, okay? And what that means is you got to start telling yourself the truth over and over and over again. Y'all heard of like affirmations, you know? Looking in the mirror saying, I am worthy, I am beautiful, I deserve an incredible life. I know that sounds so cheesy, but you're teaching your heart who you really are. You got to remember who you really are again. Because then you won't settle for the life that you found yourself in, right? Repetition, hanging around different people that tell you different messages about your self-worth over and over and over again. Who are you hanging around? I want you to think about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Think about them right now. Put them in your mind. Now let me ask you something. Do you want to be where they are? Because let me tell you, you're going to become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. That's average income. If you're hanging around a bunch of broke people, guess what? You're going to be the 5th, 6th broke person, right? If you're hanging around a bunch of people that are just wasting their time, they're not motivated in life, they're not trying to attain goals, guess what? You're going to be the 6th one. You got to start hanging around new people over and over that tell you different messages about who you are. That's why these meetings are so important. That's why connecting with the leaders are so important. Connecting with the people who you see here each and every week, that's important, right? The second way that you upgrade your identity is through intense emotional experiences. I know this sounds crazy, but this is actually scientific. Repetition and intense emotional experiences are the way you upgrade your self-worth. It's how you change your core beliefs about yourself. You're like, intense emotional experiences, what does that mean? You know, we had some worship music playing earlier, and he said, close your eyes and just sing this part. And when you can really surrender to God in that moment and just close your eyes, you can be filled with the Holy Spirit. You can have an intense emotional experience that changes you, right? When you're in your individual counseling sessions or your group counseling and something clicks, you have that aha moment. That can be an intense emotional experience that you're like, okay, something's going to change from here on out, right? When here's the thing, in our addiction, sometimes we don't really remember everything, right? And as you're getting sober, you start remembering stuff. So when you're sitting there by yourself at night and you start remembering stuff and it hurts, and it's an intense emotional experience, lean into it. And let that pain be a mile marker moment for you where you say, I'm never going to put myself in a situation where I have to feel like this ever again. Does that make sense? Yeah. Those intense emotional experiences, you can lean into and leverage them to not be the same going forward. So I want to show y'all how to become someone different. Because if you want a different life, you got to become someone different, which means you got to have a different self-worth, right? You got to become the person that deserves the life of your dreams. So you got to believe you deserve to become the person that deserves the life of your dreams. Does that make sense? You're not going to become the person of your dreams if you don't believe you deserve to, right? So I'm going to show you how to become someone different. Oh, here's my markers. So we have triggering situations that happen to us in life, right? And then we have a thought. And then we have a feeling. Then a behavior. And this is who we're becoming. So let me tell you how this usually plays out. I want you to think about things that trigger you usually, okay? Tell me, what are some things that usually trigger you to kind of get really emotional, get really mad? What are some things? Stress.
Ignorant.
What is it?
Ignorant.
Ignorance.
Kids.
Kids. Y'all are killing me. What was it?
Tired.
Oh man, tired. Yes. You don't want to see Amy that hadn't had a lot of sleep. So here's what happens. We have our triggering situation, okay? Let's say someone is being ignorant. Let's say someone is being mean. We have a triggering situation. Now, usually what's our thought? Be honest, what's your immediate thought? Screw you.
Oh, heck
We in
no.
the church.
Well, that's what someone said. I'm just, hey, let's be real. Then you have a feeling. What's that feeling probably going to be? Anger? Probably going to be anger. Now, what do you think your behavior is going to be? Probably not good. Now, guess what? That's who you're becoming. That automatic thought you have, that automatic feeling, leads to an automatic behavior, and that's who you're becoming. Do you want to be the person who gets angry and explodes at every little thing? Do you want people's actions to have control over you?
No.
I don't either. We have to start changing our thoughts, that immediate thought. And here's the problem with that. If I got an orange up here and I put pressure on it and I really squeeze it hard, guess what? What's on the inside is going to come out. So when pressure hits you, what's on your inside that's going to come out? We got to change. We got to change the way we feel automatically. We got to change our behavior automatically. And let me tell you, if we don't get control of this cycle right here, this is where relapse happens, is right here. This is where it happens. You had that triggering situation. You immediately went to a negative thought, immediately went to a negative emotion, immediately had a horrible behavior. Now it's like, boom, you're like, oh God, I got to go numb out. I got to go seek an escape from what I'm dealing with right now. Anybody relate to that? So first, we got to start believing we deserve something better than what we already have. Now, we got to want it enough that when that triggering moment happens, we can change our thoughts. And then we can start getting control of our feelings. Then we get control of our behavior. Because let me tell you something. If you can get control of this right here, you will never relapse again. You will never relapse again. When we don't have any control over our thoughts and feelings and behavior, we're just at the whim of our own emotions, right? That is why, let me tell you something. I told the girls the other day at my recovery center, I said, I relapsed this week. This was just a couple weeks ago. I said, I relapsed this week. And they were like, Amy, like, you're a leader. I don't think you're supposed to relapse. I was like, I lost control of my emotions. That's a relapse for me. If I can't stay in control of this cycle, I can't stay in control of my sobriety. If I can't stay in control of my thoughts, feelings, and behavior, I can't stay in control of my life. I can't create the life of my dreams, the life that God had in mind for me. So that's a relapse for me. And you know what? What was my trigger? I didn't sleep very well the night before. Someone said something bad about someone I cared about. Tick, tick, boom. You know what I mean? So after that happens, after I have an emotional relapse, I always go back and I say, okay, what triggered that? What could I have done on the front end of that to not have that happen again? The last time I had a relapse, an emotional relapse, was 6 months ago. I track them just like I would track any other relapse. When you can get control of this, you can get control of your recovery, you can get control of your life. Now, you start working on your self-worth through repetition, through intense emotional experience. You start realizing you deserve to work on this. You deserve to work on your thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And if you're doing it really right, you're forming a relationship with Christ, because I truly believe that's the pretty much the best answer to any of our problems, right? Well, let me tell you about Christ. Have y'all ever heard of like the 5 love languages?
Yeah.
So tell me what the 5 love languages. You know, what does it mean? But what does it mean if your love language is acts of service? What does that mean if I'm your partner?
I like to do things for you, cleaning, cooking.
And you feel loved when I do that for you, right? You want to know God's love language? Obedience. When you start working on all this and you're working on your self-worth and you start doing the right thing, let me tell you something. Do the right thing over and over. It will change how you feel about yourself. It'll make that self-worth upgrade huge, right? Like I said, if you want your life to become different, you've got to become someone different. And if you want to become someone different, your self-worth has to become different. I heard this saying the other day, if the root is poison, the fruit is poison. Right? So if we're believing all these lies about ourselves, guess what? Our fruits are going to be a lie. Right? God has a lot to say about how important it is for His followers to have good fruit. His love language is obedience, and that's how we show our love for Him. John 15:16 says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last. And so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give to you." What He's saying is, if you just do the right thing, I got you. That's what He's saying. If you just do the right thing over and over again, yes, you're going to make mistakes. And that's okay. We're going to make mistakes, right? But that's okay. But if you just try to do the right thing over and over and over again, God's going to bless you for that. And here's the other thing. Romans 5:19 says, "Do not merely," oops, just kidding. "For just as through the disobedience of the one man, it made the many people be sinners, so also through the obedience of one man, the many will be made righteous." Your obedience doesn't just affect you. And your lack of obedience doesn't just affect you.
Amen.
You're affecting your significant other, your children, your family, your friends. And the cool thing is when you're obedient, it works the same way. You're affecting your significant other, your children, your family, your friends. There's a verse, I won't go through it, but it says, Jesus is saying, "I'm the vine and you're the branches, and if you don't bear good fruit, you'll be cut off." And see, so many of us in addiction, we live by this thought. We say, well, once saved, always saved, I'm good, I'm just going to live the life I want. Step on any toes there? Because I've been there, right? Here's the problem. You're going to be miserable. God has all these blessings for you He wants to give to you, and you're going to live the little short time here on earth in misery because you want to do things your own way and you don't want to be obedient. Let me say that again. Because we want to do our own thing and we don't want to be obedient, right? And it's not just affecting you. We want to have that good fruit. I'm trying to wrap up a little bit. So, the solution to everything you think is wrong with your life, the way you achieve your goals, the way you become the person God intended you to be, is to remember who you are. Y'all know the story of the prodigal son? The prodigal son had a revered father who had this huge inheritance for him. He said, "Give me my inheritance." He goes, spends it all, just lives a flesh-filled life, and then he spends all of it. He ends up eating in the pig trough. You know what I mean? He's eating food that was meant for the pigs. When he had an inheritance, he had a destiny, right? But guess what? He went back to his father, and his father threw him a party. That's what God does when we say, look, I know I'm messing up a little bit, right? When we go back to Him, He throws a party for us. He wants to get those blessings to you as soon as possible. Anybody in here notice that when you just start doing the right thing, even at the beginning of it, things just start working out? Anybody notice that? Things just start working out. It's because God wants to bless you. He wants for you to get your children back. He wants that. He wants for y'all to go to nursing school. He wants for you to be financially independent. He wants for you to be stable. He wants that. You got to want it as much as He does. You deserve the life of your dreams. Actually, you deserve a life you can't even dream of because God's already dreamed of it for you. Start learning who you are again and remember what you deserve. You're royalty. You are royalty. You are the child of the King of Kings. Don't forget that. And this is going to be a process, and it's not going to be easy at all, and it's going to take time, by the way. Are we okay with it taking a little bit of time if we get to where we want to go? Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to pray us out, and then I think he's going to come play a song. Thank you. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time with my people, these incredible human beings, these incredible men and women. I ask that you would truly open the eyes of their heart and allow what we talked about today to not only go into their heart, but to go into their feet. And they walk this thing out. And that the word that was spoken today does not return void. And that when they leave from here tonight, their life follows a different direction because of the work they're willing to put in. Because they're realizing they deserve more than the way that their life has turned out. They realize that they deserve an inheritance fit for royalty. We love you, we honor you, we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
There I was, empty-handed, crying out from the pit of my despair. There you were, in the shadows, holding out your hand, you made me big. And now where would I be without you? Where would I be? Jesus, you were the voice in the desert, calling me out in the dead of night, fighting my battles for me. You were my rescue storm. You lifted me up from the ashes. You carried my soul from death to life, bringing me from glory to glory. You were my rescue storm. You are, you are my